Hello, my lovely dark readers, and welcome back to the Dark Spine, your sanctuary of shadows, where we bask in all things emotionally rich, beautifully tragic, and just a little bit twisted. I'm your host, Sarah, the resident devourer of dark romantasy and fantasy fiction, with a slight addiction to sprayed edges and heartbreak. Today I'm going to be talking about The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Now, I will preface this by saying that while this book leans more into the fantasy side than the dark or the romantasy genre we typically explore here, I promise it still earns its place in the shadows. Why? Because it has that special something, an emotional depth, a hauntingly atmospheric world, and characters that burrow their way into your chest and nest there for days after you close the last page. Also, on a slightly squealy personal note, this was the very first book I received from FairyLoot. So yes, I am emotionally attached, and no, I will not be accepting criticism. This gorgeous edition came to me like a jewel in the mail, and spoiler alert, I absolutely adored it. But we'll get into all of that and more. Before we dive into the characters, plot, or themes, I just need to take a moment to show off the book itself, because quite frankly, it's a work of art. And yes, this might not be a visual medium per se, but you're going to hear about it anyway. This FairyLoot edition is genuinely one of the most beautiful books I've ever held in my hands. The cover design, sublime. It's got this dreamy, slightly haunted aesthetic with deep jewel tones and intricate silver foiling. The sprayed edges are a galaxy of moths and stained glass windows, and the inside dust jacket art looks like something that belongs in a cathedral. The whole thing just feels sacred, like it's already telling you this is a story to be treasured. So let me show you. Here is the said dust jacket, absolutely beautiful. The front with that lovely silver foil, and the back. And then let me just take this off and show you the actual book. How pretty is that? The way the silver just catches the light. It's gorgeous. It genuinely is a work of art, and I will treasure this book forever. Now, I mentioned my best friend Lisa in my FairyLoot unboxing video, and she has this habit of displaying her books with the pages out because the edges are just so beautifully detailed. And I tried to do that. I really did. But the type A in me simply couldn't cope with the spines being hidden. I need that title, that author name, all neatly in a row on my shelf. I think when I've got a full set of FairyLoot beauties, I'll be able to do that Lisa-style display with more confidence. But for now, it's spine out and proud. All right, gushing over, let's dive into the heart of The Night and the Moth. The story is set in the fantastical Stonewater Kingdom, a realm that lives and breathes magic, ruled by omens and drenched in symbolism. This world is steeped in mysticism, with a social and political structure built around sacred orders, elemental creatures, and spiritual institutions. It reminded me a bit of Arthurian legend with a splash of Disney dark mode. Think stained glass, sacred springs, and ancient rituals, but with a sense of whimsy and a fair bit of chaos. At the centre of the kingdom's spiritual life is the ailing cathedral. This isn't just your standard big fancy church, no. This place holds actual magical power. The diviners, a select group of gifted young women, live and work there. These girls aren't just oracles, they're vessels of prophecy, able to glimpse the future by connecting with a sacred, magical spring. It's all very ceremonial and reverent, but also a little cultish in that you belong to the Abbey now, darling, kind of way. And that's where we meet our heroine, Six. And yes, her name is Six, but more on that shortly. What's beautiful about Gillig's world building is how it balances the magical with the mundane. There are omens in the water and knights in silver cloaks, but also muddy boots, bureaucratic orders, and rigid hierarchies. You feel the tension between the magic and the man-made rules, which adds a lot of depth to this fantasy setting. Then there are the sprites, mischievous, elemental beings that embody fire, water, air, and earth. They're dangerous, unpredictable, and integral to the magic of the kingdom. You get the sense that they could either help you ascend to godhood or absolutely ruin your day, depending on their mood. And Gillig doesn't over-explain the magic system, and I appreciated that. She trusts the reader to intuit how things work based on context, which keeps the pace smooth and the atmosphere rich. You feel like a guest in a strange cathedral, piecing things together from the whispered prayers and the shifting shadows. Now, let's talk about Six, our protagonist. First of all, yes, her name is a number, and that alone tells you something about the world she inhabits. Names in this society, especially for the diviners, are tied to purpose and position. And Six was the sixth girl chosen in her diviner class. That's it. That's her whole identity. And you immediately feel for her, because who among us hasn't felt like just a number at some point in our lives? Six is one of those characters who grows on you. She starts off reserved, rule-bound, completely obedient to the abbess who runs the cathedral. But as the story progresses and she's forced to step out into the larger world, you start to see the fire in her. She's clever, empathetic, and deeply curious. She's been conditioned to suppress her emotions, to always seek the truth of a situation through divine interpretation rather than gut instinct. But that begins to shift when she meets the king and his sidekick Rory. Oh yes, here comes King Benji, and maybe a love interest Rory. Now Benji is not your typical fantasy monarch. He's young, idealistic, and clearly a bit out of his depth, but he's also open-minded and not afraid to challenge the old ways. When Six is assigned to divine his fate, there's an instant connection. It's intellectual and it's spiritual. He sees her as a person, not just a prophetic mouthpiece. That's rare in Six's world, and it shakes something loose in her. But it's the dynamic between Six and Rory that is really electric. But also, refreshingly, it's not immediate insta-love. The romance unfolds slowly, built on mutual trust, shared trauma. Honestly, it gave me major Uprooted by Naomi Novik vibes, mixed with the court intrigue of Throne of Glass. Six's journey is definitely one of self-discovery, and it's done with such nuance. She doesn't become a badass warrior girl boss overnight. Instead, she makes small choices that gradually unshackle her from the life she's known. She questions things, fails, learns, and crucially begins to define herself on her own terms. She's not flashy, she's not dripping in snark, but she's brave and she earns every bit of her transformation. Honestly, she might be one of the most quietly powerful protagonists I've read this year. Now, I cannot in good conscience talk about this book without bringing up my favourite character, Gargoyle. Yes, that is his name, and yes, he's exactly what you think, a cursed stone guardian who talks, complains, offers unsolicited advice, and generally steals every scene he's in. He's the comedic sidekick, sure, but he's so much more than that. Gargoyle is the character who brings levity to the darkest of scenes. He misinterprets idioms, he gets huffy when people ignore him, and he's constantly teasing Six like a grumpy older brother. But beneath the sass and stone exterior lies a deeply tragic backstory that, again, no spoilers, but wow, just wow, had me in floods of tears. He represents the emotional cost of magic in this world. He's literally stuck between life and death, flesh and stone, past and present, and his interactions with Six are some of the most poignant moments in the book. He sees her potential before she sees it herself. He challenges her, but never judges her, and when he hurts, you hurt. It's rare for a character who starts out as comic relief to end up being the emotional heartbreak of the story, but Gillig pulls it off beautifully. Honestly, I would read a whole spin-off novella from Gargoyle's POV. Just 300 pages of him making sarcastic observations and quietly mourning the life he once had. Inject that directly into my veins. Now let's talk plot. The plot of The Knight and the Moth is surprisingly simple, and I don't mean that as a critique. This isn't a story packed with 1,000 side quests and a murder board of subplots. It's a character-driven narrative with a clear through line. Six gets a vision, that vision sets off a chain of events, and chaos ensues. Yep, some elements are predictable. There's the chosen one vibe, the mysterious mentor figure, the forbidden romance, but honestly, that familiarity just works in the book's favour because it's not trying to shock you with endless twists, it's trying to take you on an emotional journey. And when the one big twist does hit, it hits. I genuinely did not see it coming. I gasped out loud. I texted Lisa in all caps. I had to close the book and stare into the void for a minute. It reframed everything that had come before and elevated the emotional stakes in a way that felt earned, not cheap. So, yeah, while the bones of the plot are classic, the execution is exquisite. It's the kind of story that lulls you with its rhythm and then knocks you over when you least expect it. Let's address the romantasy elephant in the room. Is it actually romantic? Short answer, yes, but it is a slow burn. This isn't a book dripping in spice or full of swoony one-liners. The romance between Six and Rory is tender, respectful, and deeply earned. It's more about soul bonding than bed hopping. Think longing glances, shared secrets, subtle touches, and mutual growth. There is some spice eventually, but the emotional intimacy is what takes centre stage. This is about two people learning to trust not just each other, but themselves. And that, my dark readers, is the good stuff. If you're going in expecting fourth wing levels of steam or Akatar levels of steam, you're going to be disappointed. But if you're craving something gentler, more introspective, something that leaves your chest aching rather than your cheeks flushed, then this is the book for you. The Knight and the Moth is one of those stories that lingers. It's not a flashy epic, it's not a gut-wrenching tragedy, but it gets under your skin. It stays with you. I found myself thinking about it during work meetings, daydreaming about the cathedral, during my drive to work, wondering what Six would do in a given moment. It's beautifully written, full of lyrical prose without being overwrought. The dialogue feels natural, the pacing steady, and most importantly, the characters are human, flawed, kind, conflicted, real, and relatable. This was a 5-star read for me on Fable, no question. And Rachel Gillig, you have a new devoted fan. I've already got the Shepherd King series on my TBR, and I cannot wait to dive in. And also, Lisa's told me it's really, really good, and she has a good eye for these kind of things. So if you're looking for a whimsical yet grounded story about a girl learning to reclaim her identity with a sprinkle of magic, a dash of romance, and a talking stone creature who deserves the world, read this book. And that, dear readers, brings us to the end of today's journey. If you've read The Knight and the Moth, let me know what you thought down below. No spoilers, please. We keep it respectful in the shadows. But until next time, keep your books close and your hearts open, and as always, keep reading in the shadows.